Welcome to Podcasters Today. I'm your host, Dennis Postema, and today I'm here with Blake. Blake, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your podcast?
Sure. Thanks, Dennis. My name is Blake Pfeil, and I'm the creator of Abandoned, which is a podcast under a much larger body of work called All American Ruins. The body of work takes people on these sonic adventures into abandoned spaces that I've explored all over the world. And it doesn't just take them into the physical spaces or the history, but also the cultural implications and what's happening inside my imagination as I'm wandering through each space. And it's really become a tool for healing, almost in like the ASMR category. And I am in the middle of season 4 right now, and we will be releasing episodes through the end of October. But it's also, there's a 4-part docuseries that I've developed with Hudsy TV. It was originally based on a blog, and we just recently launched an ASMR YouTube channel. And on top of all of that, there's an audio theater piece that's been in development that was commissioned by an organization out in Colorado called Greenbox Arts back in 2025. So it's a busy deal, but the podcast itself seems to be the thing that people have taken to the most.
And kudos to you. I don't know if you know the stats. It's something like only 10% of podcasts last past episode 21. And so, that's and I think it's even low. It's a very low amount that go past 10, but even a lower amount that go past 21. So tell me, how did you get into this niche, and like, how did that path look? Like, what did you say? Like, what happened to say, you know what, I think I'm going to start a podcast?
Yeah, it was one of those things that's like, when I was a kid, I was super into audio dramas, and I was also super into exploring abandoned spaces. Then, many, many years later, a pandemic happens. I'm bored. I'm in my house. That leads to re-exploring abandoned spaces again. I also worked at a radio station at the time, and the executive director was like, yo, I've seen the things you've been putting on Instagram. Would you like to make a podcast? And I was like, actually, that's a great idea. And how about I just try something that's so outlandish and complicated and see what happens? And so it really was one of those, like, the next thing to the next thing to the next thing. And I think I told you before we started recording that this project, and I think a lot of artists can identify with this, it sort of grew its own legs, and I am now just a passenger on the train, and I've kind of been letting it draw its own tracks and seeing where it's going. And it's been a lot of fun. And to your stat about 21 episodes being the drop-off point, I get it, man. Like, this is not an easy either business and or passion to get into, but I think what's interesting about it, hold on, let me pause these notifications really quickly. 1 second. I'm hoping you can edit this because that would be hilarious. Let me just pause these. Okay, so I the 21 episodes thing, that I think when I got to like episode 18, I was like, what the hell am I doing? But I don't know. You kind of got to just go for the thing, and that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I love that you share that, Blake, because I mean, this is what the entire show, the whole reason we put this out, because there's a lot of myths about podcasting, and everybody says, "Oh, just start a podcast," like it's like something you can throw up in your garage and it's just going to take no time. Let's talk about, first of all, some of the things. It sounds like you're extremely diligent about making sure that your podcast video, or audio, I should say, sounds perfectly right. Because I mean, for me, I'm thinking, okay, these abandoned spaces, all of these, the storytelling that goes along with it, which I want to get into as well, because it sounds like you perfected that art. But it seems like to me, video is ideal. And here you are getting all these accolades and doing very well with audio. So tell me what that looks like. And I know I want to hear about the editing process and things like that. Tell me what that looks like, and share a little bit about that process and how important it is to you and why.
Totally. So because this project was started during a global pandemic, I was really interested in all of the ways that I could kind of soothe my soul while this absolutely crazy, unexperienced experience was happening to the planet. And I think it was really challenging for a lot of people to find places of sanctuary during especially that first year. because it was really confusing and we had no information and everything was just kind of like, what the hell is happening? And I always found a lot of solace in sound, particularly. I remember discovering ASMR in like 2008 and being like, holy crap, I've had this experience of these like weird sensations in my head ever since I was a kid. I just didn't have a name for it. And there's this whole like global community of people who experience this. And so I think that kind of coupled with the fact that I think the human imagination is one of the most powerful healing tools at our disposal. We just don't realize it because the word imagination is always sort of linked with things like art and creativity as opposed to like healing and sanctuary. And so I was really interested in seeing how sound specifically could be something that helps people kind of calm their nerves and their entire nervous system in general. And it seemed to start working because I had all of these friends who were like, yo, I want to go to these abandoned spaces with you, but I'm afraid because you're not exactly following the law when you go to these spaces. And I don't call just like as a side note, I call myself a lawbreaker. I call myself a law bender. And so this also just gave me an opportunity to take folks into these spaces with me, using the power of sound as a way to also help them calm their nervous systems. And that is the community that I wound up procuring, as a group of people who just super, super dig ASMR, but also are interested in weird places like abandoned buildings. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, hey, first of all, can we explain to all the viewers what ASMR is and kind of go in depth to that, so that like for people listening, so they know, so they can, when they're interested in watching the show, they can see why.
Totally. Yeah. And just as a disclaimer, it really isn't for everybody. Like I've explained ASMR to I don't even know how many people, and I'd say 90% of the time there's sort of just like a head turn and like, what the heck are you talking about? It stands for auto sensory meridian response, and it essentially is a sensation that I think 15% of the population experiences when they hear certain sounds that are like aesthetically pleasing or soothing. It's literally the feeling of tingling in your skin that starts down at like the base of your spine and goes all the way up to the top over your head. And what I try to compare it to for people to really get them to understand is like, when you're getting a haircut and they have the buzzer at the end to like clean up the sides, that feeling of like that tingling sensation that I think a lot of people get in their muscles, especially around their shoulders, is very similar to this sensation that people feel. And like, honestly, it's kind of addicting. And I think a lot of people seek it out because it does really, really help calm the nervous system. And there's still a lot of question marks between like what it is and like why it happens as far as science is concerned. But as I understand it, they're really starting to make headway with the research behind this. And like, why is it that this particular percentage of the population experiences this sensation, and how does that happen? So that's what ASMR is.
I mean, I think that's really exciting from the aspect of, I think we've come so far as, and that's what it excites me about, the future more, even more so with than all the fun stuff that we've done with AI and everything else, but the technology and the eye-opening of even thought consciousness of people now, and just realizing, hey, there's more behind the scenes stuff working, right? So like, let's just not ignore it and consider it this anymore. Let's actually start doing the research and finding out what it is and what. So how did you even fall into this?
Well, when I was a kid, there's a very specific memory I have of watching the movie To Kill a Mockingbird, and the opening credits to that film. I remember as a kid, I would watch them over and over and over again because there's this sort of like very gentle piano music happening over the top of these visuals of a kid taking toys out of a toy box. And I would rewind this VHS tape over and over because I would get these sensations in my skull watching the hands like take stuff out of the box and put them back in. But I also, to your point about science, I also think linked to that is like the shame a lot of people feel for things that might be weird that other people might not experience or understand. And I think ASMR is such a good example of that, because suddenly YouTube happened in 2006 or whatever, and then this new thing called ASMR was born, and people started typing into comment sections like, holy crap, I thought I was the only person who experienced it. And then suddenly you've got these YouTube channels with literally 5 to 10 to 15 million followers, with just like exorbitant comment sections filled with people being like, I can't believe that I discovered this. And now it's like, oh, and it's also what I love about it. It's become a cultural joke. Like there's like people making fun of it, but also being like, we're making, like, I think when society decides to make a joke about something, it means the thing has actually become a thing.
Right.
And so anyway, that's like the origin of the ASMR thing. But I also, I listened to vintage radio dramas growing up as a kid, and I would experience it there too with Foley art, in particular. But I didn't have words for it until I got to college. YouTube just happened when I got to undergrad. This whole world opened up, and I was like, well, now I can go to sleep at night because I have these ASMR videos, and they're weird. Like there is no question. There's a lot of weird stuff out there with ASMR. But I kind of dig it because I think it just gives an example to people who are like, well, I have this weird interest in this weird thing, but I don't want to tell anybody because I'm a little ashamed or embarrassed to tell people. And I think ASMR was a good example of being like, yeah, who cares? Like, let people make fun of it. We feel good when we experience this sensation. So like, why feel embarrassed about it? And I love that. So that's kind of how I fell into it.
I love that. And haters gonna hate no matter what. I mean, it doesn't matter what industry. It doesn't matter what you're talking about, Blake. You know that. I mean, it doesn't. You could be talking about flowers, and somehow somebody's pissed off. Yeah. I mean, like I'm mad at the flower that we picked to talk about today. I mean, it's just that when a troll gets crazy, they get crazy. So it doesn't matter. Like you gotta follow that passion, which I see in you, by the way. So I love that. So tell me, how do you get? Because the audio has to be so important. Tell me about the process with that. What is the audio like? How do you capture that in such a way that now we're at X number of episodes to where, you've got this following, everybody's like, you're getting write-ups in People Magazine and things like that, people talking about it. So tell me, like, how do you get that so on point? What's the process?
Yeah, it started really more as a sound collaging process, because when I started this thing, to be honest with you, I had no idea what the hell I was doing. And it was because I've always been so curious and passionate about sound. It was me sitting in the studio at the radio station, sometimes till 4 o'clock in the morning, moving dials, adjusting things, finding sound effects that kind of matched these soundscapes that I was creating. And eventually I sort of found a groove that was like, go to abandoned space with immersive audio equipment, set up immersive audio equipment, hit record, go do your thing, sometimes take it with you on the go. So it's like, I don't know if you've seen those 3DO dummy heads that are like the binaural microphones.
Yeah.
You're going to catch me if you go to an abandoned space, literally walking around with this thing and capturing all of that sound, bringing it back into Adobe Audition, and then creating these just like really, really expansive and intricate soundscapes. And, like we were talking about before we got onto the recording, it is a painful and passionate process. Definitely a love-hate relationship, because it's not just something where I can hit record and then like make quick edits every week. It takes roughly 55 hours from soup to nuts, which includes securing the abandoned space in these weird underground Reddit communities, going to the space, capturing the sound, which often takes upwards of 5-6 hours, bringing all of it back, writing the episode, which is its own beast of an experience, because these episodes sort of blur the line between fantasy and reality. and then trying to make it palatable for the everyday listener who might come across it to be like, what is this weird, very complicated experience? And, you know, it's definitely not for everybody, but to your point about the haters, I knew that I was onto something when I got my first Apple Podcasts hate review, where I was like, oh, this means people are like, they have feelings about it. And
Yeah.
that to me felt great. But anyway, so that's the process of building each episode. And it's funny because like these come out to 20 minutes long. And at the top of every single episode, I tell the listener, if this is going to work for you, you're going to have to put everything else away for just 20 minutes. Put your headphones in and take this little sonic trip with me as we explore these abandoned spaces. And in 2026, as it turns out, that is a huge ask for people. But I think this is the hill I'm going to die on, is we are not giving ourselves nearly enough space to rest and to get our nervous systems back in check so we can then come back to these passion projects or empires, like a 24-year business that you've built, to keep it going. Like, we have to build in moments for rest. And I don't think people understand that. And honestly, I think that's why millennial burnout is such a thing, is because people have become so addicted to work that they are not building in these moments to take a pause and reset their nervous systems. And so that was kind of the goal with the show too, is just like, I promise you can take 20 minutes out of your day to just sit and listen to an adventure and go somewhere else. And then you can come back to your work and keep kicking ass the way that you have been.
I mean, to me, it sounds like it'd be a really good form of like almost like a quiet meditation, to where you could just really zone in and allow to like your mind to be at ease and just not have to be like, you know, like it would give you, because of the noise, right? It's harder for me to like meditate because like my head starts spinning and thinking into all the things. So, you know, I'm constantly finding ways to try to get the focus on not having a focus. And that sounds like a good way to do it. So you've gone through this process. Now, have you had requests for different places to be visited?
Yeah. I've, it's a niche underground world of people. And once a very specific subset of it's called urban exploration, which is shortened to urbex. Once a very specific subset of that already niche population found me, I did get a lot of people reaching out being like, you should come to Texas and check out this abandoned oil field with me. You should come down to Virginia and check out this abandoned museum with me. But, like, internet friends are kind of a dime a dozen because it's still the internet. And so, like, you can't see the reality of 5-dimensional human beings behind the screen that you're talking to them on. And so I'm kind of, I don't know, like, I'm super down to go to a party and like talk to a stranger and like totally be TMI with them within like the first 5 minutes. But like when it comes to like meeting friends online, I think I'm a little more wary.
Yeah.
But I have gotten people asking me to come to certain spaces, and I did wind up going to this abandoned school in Virginia, and I did meet a new friend there, and it was super cool. But normally I am diving down wells upon wells inside of Reddit rabbit holes to find locations, because it's also a very secretive community. And I don't think a lot of people actually like dig what I do, because I'm not hiding the locations of these spaces. I'm actually very forward about them, because the thing is, like, none of us owns these properties. Like, we are visitors. We are bending the law in the first place by going to visit them. But like gatekeeping of any kind, I kind of just think is lame. And I think the reality is that, like, architecture, just like humanity, it's going to be built and then it's going to fall. And so I don't think that we can control that reality. And I think I've upset a lot of people in the urban exploration community because I'm not shy about sharing locations. But whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got to be a trendsetter or something, so that's a way to do it. I mean, that's a category of fun is all right to be in. So we've established that Blake's not only looking for somebody to sponsor him, but security on these trips if you put any requests. So if you have a request for Blake and you want him to travel somewhere, we're looking for sponsorships and security, so he's good until we know who you are. Yeah. So
totally.
We're going to do a background check. Yeah. So
yes, that's right. We're going to get the FBI involved. I need a blood sample. I need an eye scan. Yeah.
the new way of research. So tell me some of 55, and you're looking for sponsorships. Obviously, we need to help Blake get his 55 hours of editing down. So we want to make sure that anybody who's interested in this topic, we're going to talk about how you can get a hold of Blake at the end. But so Blake, tell me some of the heartaches that you ran into throughout podcasting that, because there's so much glimmer and, we're all going to be Joe Rogan and just get these huge contracts, and then, literally just be able to talk and interview people for a living, which would be amazing, by the way. It's so much fun learning about people, but let's talk about some of the heartaches that you have through in your years of podcasting.
I think the biggest one is when a person hears the word podcast, it automatically sets up an understanding or a definition of what that word means. And I think the cultural understanding of that word is group of people sitting around table with microphones talking to each other, or two people sitting across from each other at table with microphones being interviewed or interviewing someone. And from the get-go, because I knew that just wasn't going to be my vibe or my speed, and it certainly wasn't going to be the intention of the show, that was an uphill battle in and of itself. Was how do I help people understand from the second that I open my mouth and say, abandoned the All-American Ruins podcast, that it is not me interviewing other people who explore abandoned spaces. It is me literally taking you inside of the space and inside my imagination as I'm wandering through the space and meditating on things like American history, culture, and the underbelly of those two things that I think a lot of people aren't really interested in looking at right now. Because it's, I don't know if you've seen, Dennis, but the United States is in a very interesting moment right now where we have just watched divisiveness explode in a way that is untenable. And I am not, when you love a person, place, or thing, I think part of loving a person or loving a thing is being able to ask critical questions of that thing and really be upfront about it. Like my dearest friends, if I'm acting like an asshole, I want my dearest friends to be like, dude, you're acting like an asshole. That is love to me. That is friendship. And I think in a similar light, I have really started to look at these architectural spaces as symbols of a story that we may not be interested in telling about the United States of America, which I will continue to believe is the greatest country on earth. And I'm unbelievably proud to be an American. And also, I think with that pride, you have to be willing to ask critical questions about what's going on and be honest with yourself too. And so I don't know. I felt like that also was an uphill battle from the get-go because people are so angry right now and they're so opinionated about the things that they're angry about. And I'm not talking like identifying with one side or the other. This is like a cross-generational experience that we're watching happen. And I do think that social media is gravely responsible for a lot of this inability for two people to sit in a room and be like, this is my opinion, this is your opinion. How about we don't pull guns on one another because we disagree about this thing? How about we use the human evolution experience of communication and talk about this? So that has also been an uphill battle because I think people are afraid to talk politics and they're afraid to talk social commentary. And I'm really not, and I'm kind of bored with this divisiveness. And so I'm asking a lot of really hard questions, and I don't stray from it. And that has also been a huge uphill battle. And then I just think like the third thing that has been a challenge, you know, I have gone to, I can't even tell you how many podcast conventions and listened to people in talks sitting on these stages and saying this is how it's done, and hearing that and like trying really hard not to feel like a failure, because that is just not going to be the reality for this kind of show. Like, you can preach numbers and KPIs and ROIs at me as much as you want, but the reality of what I have created does not match that speed or that particular experience with getting a business off the ground. So I think that's also been challenging too, is just like reminding myself when I get into the studio, like, you never set out to make a business with this thing in the first place. You did this because you needed to heal from an experience that was really, really challenging for you. And so anytime I can kind of like drive back to the mission of this body of work in the first place, I think it helps me like put those feelings of imposter syndrome to the side and just like, let's keep doing this thing. And I was telling you offline before we started also, like, I'm so down if at the end of this road, whatever that looks like, I didn't succeed in this particular part of this larger experience of building this body of work as far as business is concerned. I'm totally okay with that. I think people need to get hip to the potential of failure. And you hear people say that a lot, like, get comfortable with the idea of failure, but it's like, no, you actually need to be spiritually ready to look yourself in the face and say, okay, this didn't work. What is the next thing that I can take all of these experiences that I've learned from and then maybe succeed at something else?
And close that. How can I close that loop and actually put a button on it and be fine with it?
Yeah.
I mean, from my experience of seeing what, going through what we've talked about your show, and hopefully we get it on TV on the network, is one thing I think I've noticed though, is I feel like your following will be there longer. So I think that's what's important because of the passion behind it. But also I think that, there's a lot of fluff out there. I mean, there's a lot of showpreneurs. That's what I call them, showpreneurs. There's a lot of people, it's always been sunshine and rainbows and yada, yada, yada. Come on. I mean, you got to get down to the grit so that people who have something of value and something that you put together, I think you've got to get down to the reality that sharing those experiences so people know, like, that, hey, no, it doesn't always work. And sometimes course correcting, action's the way through it, right? So if you're not willing to course correct, whether it's going to different locations, whether it's doing it a different way, however it is, that making more video on it, whatever it may be, you have to share those moments, right? That's the point of our show, is to say, hey, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. We got to stick together. Attention is the hardest thing to get right now. You're fighting against, I mean, anything you want to say. You're fighting against all sorts of things that can't keep people to like concentrate, like you said, not to mention like the however many second attention span, like 2.1 or something. We've given, generationally, we've given iPhones and phones and tablets into our kids' hands since the minute they were born, and wonder why. I said the other day, I said, I can't believe how pissed off I am when I'm watching like House of Dragons, and I have to wait till the next week to watch the episode like I did when I was a kid. I told my wife, I said, you remember when that was the thing? I remember old school watching like Lois and Clark, and I had to wait till next Sunday night at 8:00. And that's what it was. Like, my daughter's like, what is this? I go, this is a commercial. And I'm like, yeah, that used to be like how we had to do things, honey. And, we're so used to just like pop on Netflix and boom, there it is. I just watched 3 seasons. We're good. But that's it, so, we are fighting that culture as far as that goes. But, Tell me what's your greatest accomplishment, Blake, that you feel from the podcast?
That's a good question. Well, first of all, I just wanted to say there's a really cool podcaster, Dr. Andre White, and he hosts this show called Redacted. And yesterday he posted a video because he got to 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, and they sent him his little plaque. And he was talking in the video, he was like, I know a lot of people maybe think that this just happened over the course of this past year. He started putting in this video, he started showing clips from a decade ago when he first started trying out what this thing looked like. And he was like, y'all, this was not a walk in the park. This was 10 years of opening my laptop and trying everything that I possibly could until I found the thing that people seem to attach to the most. And I ran with that. But this was not a walk in the park. And so I do think, to your point, like you just have to keep pushing. And if it means you're giving up this one thing to try something else, please don't view that as giving up. It just means you're putting it on the shelf and saying, I will look at that as inspiration when the thing that actually starts to hit. And I can look back at that thing on the shelf and be like, yo, remember when I was like here? That's just a good feeling. As far as success is concerned, I think, I mean, there's a lot of moments of success. You know, recently, so in the second and third year of producing the show, I was really focused on PR, and I was gunning for PR, and I found a lot of success. But I recently presented a program at On Air Fest in Brooklyn back in February. Booking that gig alone was just like a huge deal because I was sharing a bill with a bunch of these like heavy hitters, and so that felt really cool. But then Forbes did a write-up of On Air Fest, and it was the first time that I didn't have to pitch a PR outlet. They wrote about my show without me having to do anything. And I think that was really cool. And it was super unexpected. And my brother sent me the article before I even knew it existed. And he was like, nice job on keeping up with your PR pitches. And I was like, I didn't even do that. So I think that was a big success. But the other one that was really cool is being being the #1 travel podcast on Apple Podcasts, above Rick Steves and above the Atlas Obscura podcast for I think 4 days. That was the best 4 days of my life. And I was laughing about it on Instagram with my little cult following. I was like, y'all, this is never, ever going to happen again. So ride this wave with me for the next 96 hours. And they did. And yeah, so I think that was really cool too.
Yeah. How many screenshots do you have of that?
162,000.
Yeah, I remember I when mine was in top 10, I'm like, yeah. So, yeah.
No question.
And every angle, every different device that I could do it on. Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
Yeah. No, like
every marketing piece from now on, you will see. Right. Totally. So yeah, I got it. Yeah, that's it.
I almost did in my marketing make a little joke where it's like #1 podcast, travel podcast on Apple Podcasts, and then like a teeny tiny footnote, just like parentheses, like for 96 hours, which I think that's funny. And again, like this was never supposed to be a thing. It just became a thing of its own volition. And I was like, okay, well, if this has some kind of legs to it, let's go. And that's been fun.
I want to touch on one thing, and I think it could be part of an additional adventure, just so you know. Tell me a little bit about how storytelling came to be for you and how you became so great at it, because I think that's something that a lot of podcasts miss, a lot of speakers miss, a lot of writers miss. You seem to have nailed it, which seems to be a good spinoff business for you. Just throwing that out there. But talk to me about how you got so good at it.
Well, first of all, thank you, because I do think that, out of everything that goes into making this work, the foundation of it has to be really compelling storytelling. Right. storytelling, outside of this body of work, which could be its own full-time job, I have a full-time job at an organization called TMI Project. And we are a storytelling organization that helps everyday folks learn what the beginning, middle, and end of their own personal story is, specifically the TMI parts that people leave out because of shame or embarrassment, because that is where connection happens and that is where cultural liberation happens. And so I've been with this organization full time almost 9 years, and so it has become my job to teach people what compelling storytelling looks like. And I think the thing that people miss the most is this Brene Brown revolution of being vulnerable with your audience. There is nothing, absolutely nothing bad about publicly admitting certain things about yourself, because guaranteed that thing that you keep secret that you're super embarrassed about or ashamed of, guaranteed there are at least tens of thousands of other people who have that exact same experience in some way, shape, or form and share that same feeling of embarrassment or shame, who can hear you admit something like that publicly and be like, whoa. And it doesn't have to be anything that's like deeply, deeply personal. Like, you can absolutely keep certain things to yourself. But I think I listen to a lot of podcasts, and the vulnerability piece is just always seems to fall short. And I did think, when Brene Brown kind of like hit the ground running in 2015 or something, I was like, culture's about to change. And then I think for whatever reason, a lot of variables kind of like that fad only lasted as a fad. But if you're looking to be a really, really good storyteller, you got to just look your audience in the eye and tell them the truth.
Yeah.
And it sounds simple, and it's not, but I do think once people practice the art of vulnerable storytelling, even if it's like the most mundane humdrum business podcast, the practice of being vulnerable with yourself will then allow you to deliver information in a way that I think is going to be far more compelling and certainly going to keep your audience interested and like tuning in every single time you post on that RSS feed or you post on a YouTube channel. And so that's what I would say to people, like, don't be afraid to be vulnerable. I realize how scary it is, especially in a digital age when, like, what is it, 57% of web traffic is now bots or something like that I just read. It doesn't matter because the other 40-some% is still humanity. And I think humans crave intimate moments. I think humans crave rigorous honesty. And that is the best storytelling. And it doesn't have to be, a podcast about storytelling. It can be a business podcast, and you can still get vulnerable with your audience. Talk about your failures as a business person. Let them know, like, I had this really challenging moment when I ran up against a wall and I thought I was going to quit and it felt really bad. Like, you can say that. That's going to inspire people.
Yeah. I agree 100%. I talk about on a business podcast, and I said today's showpreneurs, I said, if you haven't had to take out equity on your home to make payroll, you haven't been in business. Like, and I mean that, like, like, people don't talk about stuff like that. Like, you have this staff, shit, payroll due. What are you gonna do? And so you have to pull the, so like, there's a lot of things that people don't talk about in business. They see the glam and all the other fun stuff, but I appreciate you being on the show, Blake. I mean, I want to expand our conversations and see how we can work together in the future. How do they get a hold of you? How do they follow the podcast? How do they follow you on socials?
Well, I appreciate you having me on. It's an honor because I feel like I'm probably not your most typical podcast. So that in and of itself is a gift to just be part of this show. So thank you. Folks can find me at allamericanruins.com. I'm on Instagram. I'm on YouTube. I probably should go back on Twitter when I let go of my anger for Elon Musk. I'm on Blue Sky. Like, I'm on all the places. My last name is spelled P like Paul, F like Frank, E-I-L, and I have to say it like that because It's a weird last name and people often misspell it. So yeah, you can find me anywhere.
Okay. Well, thank you for being on the show. I appreciate it. And until next time, thank you for joining Podcasters Today.
Thanks, Dennis.